Welcome back to another episode of the Get Creative podcast. I'm your host, Justin Tumanowski. You can find me at realestatejustin.com. Michael, hey, welcome to the podcast. And we're going to talk about a deal in California. We're going to talk about a Subto deal, something I think, and again, guys, if anyone who's listened to some of the episodes that I'm on, I try not to go too deep into finding out all the information ahead of time. I want to know, I want to do grassroots because also you're a listener on the outside, you're on your way to work, you're at the gym, you're doing whatever it is, you're in the shower listening to this. And I want to have the questions just like they would naturally pop up that you might have. So California Subto deal, I think you made money on it too, but then you kept it too. So we're like, how the hell do you do that? So Michael, please introduce yourself.
Hey, thanks for having me, Justin. My name is Michael Miller. I'm a real estate investor. I'm a banker gone real estate investor, and been investing about the last 3 years, largely invested in California, also in Michigan, Ohio, Texas, Washington State. So some of my markets are the markets that people tell you never to invest in, and I've done really well in them. But my background is corporate America, banking world. And I woke up one day and realized that no matter how much money I made doing what I was doing, that I was still trading my time for it. And I wasn't building anything I could give to my kids. And so that started my kind of real estate journey. And 4 months later from that, kind of moment of epiphany, I left my career of almost 20 years and was full-time in the real estate space. So the Subto, Pace, your guys' crew has been a huge part of my journey and success. And that's part of the story I think I'm here to tell you today.
Love it. And that's powerful right there. So please, jump into it. And so from the banking industry, you're obviously trading time for money. Like most of us, when we find that out, it's something like, dang it. Was there someone who actually told you it was like the purple book? Was that someone in your life? Like, what was it that maybe I just asking?
Yeah. Well, so the purple book was the foundation of all of it, right? The Rich Dad, Poor Dad. But I read that book when I was like 18 getting started in my career. And it honestly, I understood it conceptually, but it didn't hit me back then. And so I built a really awesome career, and my story is not like most people that I've encountered in the space. It wasn't like I hated my job and I was just trying to get out of the rat race. Like I was a mid 6-figure income earner, loving what I was doing. And by all intents and purposes, I was kind of living the American dream, if you will. But I remember where I was sitting at in like the breakfast, kind of our little breakfast nook in our house, when it hit me, like just out of nowhere. And I think in hindsight, really what it was that it was our daughter, our first daughter, when she showed up in our lives. I started thinking about my legacy. I started thinking about what I could give to her. And I wanted it to be more than just a couple of bucks. I wanted to build something that could, bless her beyond me and maybe her children someday. And I just literally, I woke up to this idea that I love my job, but I'm trading my time for money. And I'm building something I can't give to her. And that was really like what started the journey. And then ironically, the first thing I did is I went back to the purple book because I remembered there's this book that taught me about this. I just need to go back to it. And then that's what started the journey.
Bro, that's so good. I actually can share similar, references like that. And that's a powerful thing. When I had my daughter too, first one, my daughter Gwendolyn, and I remember driving, same thing going, I didn't hate my job, 6-figure plus, doing the whole thing, but grinding. I grinded not 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. But yeah, dude, it is a moment that some of us have and some of us don't. And I think that's why we're here to also share that you can have that moment at any given time. You can be 60 years old to 16. And I want you to share now, get into the story and how you guys are building this whole enterprise of homes and creative deals and all across the country. But in particular, we're going to talk about the California deal that you got paid, do I dare say 50 grand?
Oh, yeah, I think it was just about 50 grand. I got paid by the property. So I'll give you a little context for how I got here, and then we can talk about that deal. I had a little bit of money when I got into the game, right? And the first thing I did is I went out and bought a bunch of land. I've spent all my cash, and I'm like, I'm just going to buy all these lots, and I'm going to develop them. I'm going to build spec homes, and it was great. And this is right around COVID. And so I didn't know anything. I had bought real estate over the years. My first deal was technically in 2007, but it wasn't I hadn't like, didn't have like a real estate strategy. I just thought it was a good idea to buy real estate. And so that's how I did it. So I'm like, well, I know how to build a house and I know there's good money in that. So I went out, bought all these lots, bought all this dirt. Then COVID hits, supply chain issues, construction cost goes through the roof, and it no longer pencils to build these spec homes. Like it no longer works. And I'm like sitting here going like, okay, this is interesting because now I own all this dirt and I know enough to know that like I'm not going to lose because I'll just wait. But I've spent all my money. Like I don't have any more cash. And I'm like, what do I like now? What do I do? Right. Like I'm not totally sure where to go from here. So the next thing I did, which frankly I wish was the first thing I did, was I went on an information hunt and I started going to conferences and real estate meetups and like just trying to get around people that were doing the business. I didn't know nothing about creative finance. I mean, I'm a banker. I'm like the furthest thing from creative as you get. And I went to an event where this guy named Pace Morby pops up on stage, starts talking about Subto. And I was like, remember, I'm slightly removed from bank. And I'm like, this is for sure illegal. Like, I'm certain of it. Like, this is definitely illegal. And so, but I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued by the fact that he's telling 1,000 people to do this. So there's got to be some loophole, some merit, whatever. So I went back and I consumed every piece of content I could find on Subto. And this was in like January of like 21, I want to say. And I literally for like the next 2 weeks, I probably consumed, I don't know how many hundreds of hours of like, it was a lot of just Pace Morby and other stuff. And then 2 weeks after that, I bought my first Subto deal. And so like literally I went from like, this is illegal to my first Subto deal in the course of like a month.
That says a lot probably about you too, that some folks would have to analysis paralysis for so long. But I have to ask, this popped in my mind too. Now, your significant other, right? Was there like a level of, and some people have this, some people don't. Was there a level of like convincing or saying, look what this thing I just realized? Or is someone completely checked out of like your phase of the business there? Or
Yeah, she's my scenario. My wife is not really interested in real estate. She's not impressed by any of this, you know, so she's happy that I found my space, but she's not like I told her about it and she's like, that sounds confusing. Like she's just not in it. So like, no, I didn't really have any opposition there. I think the opposition I had was, you know, a little bit in my own head of like not doing it, but like, how do I do it? Cause I stumbled into that deal like really messily. Like it literally was like such a messy conversation. I only knew what I had like learned from like YouTube and like, I just had to figure it out.
yeah,
And that's not the deal we're here to tell the story about, but that was my first Subto deal and it did really well for me, even though it had some headaches and some mess ups and some immature mistakes.
well, all real estate does most often, right? There's always those hiccups and things we can't avoid, but yeah, just like keep plowing through it is what you got to do, and just you know try to do the right thing. But all
Yeah.
right, let's get into it. So we're like, yeah, tell everybody where you found it, how did this come through, and I guess
So I
like
think this was my second Subto deal, which was like maybe a month later.
you answered it. All right, I was going to ask that. All right, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it was my second one. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure. And to be clear, I bought that one, and then I bought I think 20 more that year, Subto. And that's not the only way that we bought real estate, but like we really went like when I say that this thing helped me build my portfolio, like it's quite literally. I was out of money. I had to figure out how to get creative, and this strategy accelerated that in such a meaningful way. So I got to my second deal, and the way that it came about is, oh, by the way, once I figured this out and I got my first deal done, I started telling everybody I knew about it. Like I became like the Subto Kool-Aid guy for like, you know, all of Northern California. And so all the realtors I knew, all the people in my network, like I just started talking about Subto. I started meeting up with people, telling them about why their strategy sucks and why this one's better. Like, you know, a little bit annoying. Like I was that guy. I was like the annoying.
You're the dude with the pyramid scheme.
Yeah, exactly. Literally, that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
But I had a couple of people that were intrigued. Like I had a couple of realtors that were like, okay, you're weird, but interesting. And one of them in particular called me up and said, hey, I got this situation and I don't understand. Like we had met, I told her about Subto. She kind of got it, but like didn't fully understand it. She's like, I got this situation I don't know if this works for you, but let me tell you about it. And basically the story was this family that was like living multi-generationally in a home. They had outgrown their space. It was a turnkey property, like fairly new construction, like in the last 15 years, like pretty new, no issues. It actually has a mobile home on the back side of the property that was like a separate home, which I don't typically buy mobile homes, but it kind of came with the deal. So anyways, they had outgrown the property and they had been looking for a bigger home, a bigger property. And they had been hunting, and they staggered across a property that was their dream home, like for their family. It was like a compound. It had all the stuff that they wanted. The only problem is that the seller of the new home would not sell it to them contingent on the sale of their existing home. And they liked the family. If I remember correctly, it was like they liked the family and wanted to sell it to them, but they had like another interested party that could close in like a normal, somewhat quick time, something to that effect. The bottom line was they had to close in like 7 days to make this work. And they were like, we don't care. Like all we need is, and I should have it pulled up in front of me. I don't, but you guys will figure out the math of it. But they needed like something to the effect of $70,000 to put down on the new place and to like bridge whatever they needed for the new place. And they're like, if I can get $70,000, like I don't really care about anything else. And so I got into the deal. And again, I'm staggering through this thing and kind of analyze, like I'm learning as I go. And I basically figured out that not only was this place worth, far more than what they were asking, but I learned that they had a mortgage on it, that they had it like 2.7. And they had a $60,000 solar system they had put on the property that was at like 1.99% interest. And then obviously the mobile home. And so I got in, I started analyzing the deal. And ultimately what I presented to them was, hey, look, and by the way, the entry fee, like that $70,000 in cash, I didn't have that. So that's an important part of the story. Figured if I could find out how to get them the $70,000, I would have close to like $150,000 in equity, and I would take over this property, and I would make something like $2,200 a month in cash flow, $2,300 a month in cash flow between the single family home and the mobile home in the back.
All right.
I said, but the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to take over your mortgage Subto. I'm going to take over your solar Subto. I didn't even know if you could do that. I just said it. I just like figure it out,
That's right.
And then, if in my head, I'm like, if they say yes to this, then I got to figure out how to get 70 grand. So pitched it to the realtor. She pitched it back to the client. The client said, yeah, if you can close in 7 days, we'll do it. So I was like, okay, now I got to figure it out. So I started hitting up my entire network of people that I knew that might be interested in doing some sort of bridge financing, whatever. And I just went on a mission to find capital, which is another thing I had learned from just consuming the content. I just knew to ask the right questions to position the deal. Long story short, I found a lender who basically I was able to pitch this deal to. And he's like, yeah, I'll totally do that deal. And he came back to me. He's like, yeah, I'll give you $70,000. I think I paid him 10%, was the deal I gave him, which was a great deal for me because I had so much cash flow on the property. It didn't matter. And, the interesting thing is I get to the end of the conversation with him and he's like, yeah, I'll do this deal with you. I'm going to be in second position. I forget what the loan to value was, but it was low. It was like 70, below 70%, I think. And the interesting part is I get to the end of the conversation. He's like, the problem that I have is that I've actually got 120 grand in this account that I've been sitting on. Like, what would you do? Like, do you have something else you could put this 50 into? And I was like, not really. Like in my head, I'm like, I don't have another deal. So I'm like, you're offering me more money. Okay. Like I got to figure out like, what's the opportunity here? That's a win-win, right? An ethical way to leverage this. And I went back and I started thinking and I started hunting. I started asking people for deals. And then all of a sudden, once again, like another epiphany, it hit me. I went, I've got like 150,000 or 200,000 in equity in this deal. Why don't I just add it on top of this deal? I'll get paid to close on the property, and I don't care that I'm paying him 10% because I've got $2,200 a month in cash flow. And so I literally went back to him and I was like, why don't we just add it on to this deal? You're still going to be at like 70% or 72% loan to value. So it's like a really safe opportunity for you in terms of like leverage. And I'll pay you the 10% on all the money. And he's like, sounds great to me. Like, I want to put all my money to work. And so legitimately in the course of 7 days, I think it ended up being like 8 days or something. I think we got a little delay in title and all that stuff. The solar gave us a little bit of pushback, but over the course of a little over a week, we pulled in the cash that we needed. I took the mortgage Subto. I took the solar Subto. We brought in $120,000 at the closing table to close. 70,000 went to the seller to close the deal that they wanted to close their dream house on. So this was a home run for them. There would have been no way they could have gotten their dream home. You know, people have been like, well, oh, did you take advantage of their situation? No, they offered me the opportunity. They told me what they wanted. I just said yes to what they wanted. And then I went out and figured out how to make it work for me. And so they were stoked. My private money lender, he didn't care that I was making 50 grand because his money was secured by a good equity position. And I got paid to close the deal. Like, I literally at the close of escrow, it was probably a little less than 50, but it was effectively like 49, whatever, $1,000. And so that's when everything changed for me. That's when I went, oh, this is how this works. And by the way, and then I'll shut up, but I'm excited about the story. But by the way, it didn't occur to me until I closed that not only did I make $50,000 to buy a piece of real estate that was still cash flowing like $1,400 or $1,500 a month, but that $50,000 was tax free. And
Yeah.
I was like, and again, I was just putting all the pieces together as I was doing it. I'm like, this is how wealth is created. And
Yeah.
so we've been doing versions of this ever since.
Yeah, bro, that's so good because, and actually, you're one of the first people to actually essentially talk about that. I wrote it right here. I was like, essentially, this was a cash out refi in a sense because you're taking borrowed money. Guys, think about this, and anyone in the audience, it might be if you're tripping up on this in the mentality of it and going, oh, hold on a minute, you guys went a little too deep. So essentially, he paid himself, but what he did is that private money lender brought the money in. He took the money, but it's still a loan. It's still the bank's money, technically, right? We're going to call it the bank, the lender's money. So therefore, it is not taxable because it is a mortgage. So it's a loan. Really cool stuff where that's, again, cash out refi. So now, the question I came up with, is this person a lender at 10%? And they also an equity partner, or are they straight up 10% of the cash flow, 10% of the whatever comes out of it?
Great question. No, it's 10% interest on his money.
Okay.
So he's not an equity partner. He's not getting a percentage of the cash flow or the deal. I literally just paid him 10% a year. And he was stoked because the part of the story I didn't add on because I didn't want to add complexity is it was actually a self-directed IRA.
Perfect.
That we used, which we can talk about if we've got the time. But this is like the ultimate hybrid of creative strategies together. But I just paid him 10% on his money. So, 120 grand, I'm paying him like what, $800 a month, something like that.
And so and guys in the audience out there listening, he's not the investor, or the lender is not looking. It's a 401k that he's able to go throw into different deals that he chooses. So he's getting 10% return, which is actually the metric that they always say, like year after year, 10 years, the average is 10% on your 401ks. But aside from that, this gentleman can't go get the money back. I'm sure he can go deploy it and go cycle it through as many times as he wants. But also at the same time, he's just looking to place it in a safe asset, knowing it's getting 10% every month. And it's backed by real estate. It's not some hedge fund. It's not someone else controlling it. Essentially, it's a deal that he vetted, he got into, and it's a tangible piece of real estate that his money and equity is on in a position. So guys, it's a 401k. And then the other thing is the guy's not looking for it back unless he's going to retire. He's not like he can go take the money out and go buy a boat with it. If he does, he's going to get taxed on it.
Yep. Yeah. And we ended up refinancing that property, unfortunately, because we did have the big boogeyman come due on that deal. So it was my first due on sale experience, which is a whole nother thing for the listener, because due on sale is such a big, scary thing in the sub 2 space. I'm telling you, it was the easiest thing I've ever dealt with. We chose to refinance, but we didn't have to. The reason why we chose to refinance is because the loan amount in first was so small that the interest rate really wasn't that big of a loss to us. And we just it was cleaner that way.
Mhm.
But what that also did is that freed up this private money lender to become my future lender for a dozen more deals.
That's great. And if you don't mind, if I touch base on that real quick, I mean, obviously, sometimes a lot of it actually time is the investor ourselves, brand new, failing forward. Sometimes we trigger those due on sale clauses ourselves, insurance, and not doing paperwork properly. Do you know what it was, or?
Yeah, this one was on us for sure.
Mhm.
So basically what it came down to was that we didn't handle insurance properly. So we transferred insurance, didn't add the mortgagee on the new policy. So they got notified that the insurance was canceled and not notified that they were added to a new insurance policy, which triggered the whole sequence. That, combined with the fact that this particular mortgage company, I think, is a little bit more notorious for having a little bit less flexibility on these things and calling notes due. So we learned a lot from that. But like when I got that notice, I had that like pit in my stomach, like I'm ruined, I'm going to lose this asset, like that fear.
Yeah.
And I got with the specialist, Caleb Christopher, and he's like, this is what we're going to do, and within like 4 hours, I had like 3 options to solve it. And I just chose the one that made the most sense to me.
Yeah, Caleb's so smart. So that's brilliant. And don't panic. It is what it is. There's the right resources, the right people will figure it out. And you can bring a private money lender back in, cash them out. Guys, if you're on the outside looking in and you have this strategy and you're doing creative deals, collaborate with Michael, collaborate with Caleb. There's plenty of people who have been through this and understand the process. Just ask, raise your hand. It's okay. Michael's telling us about a vulnerable moment and a blip in the radar. And I actually like that because he's been through it. So freaking bring him on. Now, I had a gentleman reach out to me in Connecticut recently, and I helped him through it. But I go, he had it triggered. He's like, bro, I did everything wrong. He didn't even get insurance.
But she's
And yeah, this kid, like, he's a knucklehead. He's such a knucklehead. And he doesn't want help. He thinks he can do it all himself. He reached out. I gave him some value as, in New England. And I said, bro, call the bank tomorrow. It was a smaller bank. And they actually told him, we'll give you forbearance for 6 months to get your shnikes in order. And you better refinance. Bro, he didn't have to pay the mortgage. They gave him forbearance for 6 months.
Yeah.
So just ask.
We had a second one. So I've had 2 due on sales. So I'm infinitely unlucky, but
It means you're doing deals.
yeah, that's right. The second one, we called the bank and we're like, hey, we did exactly that. And they're like, oh yeah, just send us the contract. And they looked at the contract and they're like, yeah, we're good with this. And like, just stopped the due on sale. They just let us keep it.
That's so cool. We don't talk about that enough.
Yeah.
All right. That's another episode.
There you go.
All right, Mike, let's go back. So where we pick up. So you had the due on sale triggered, you refinanced, you took out, sure, your private money got cash back out. Then now you deployed that same self-directed investor in other deals. Great. What does it look like now? What's the strategy? What are you guys doing? How are you housing these? Is it co-living? Is it long-term rentals?
Yeah. Yeah. So all our deals are pretty much long-term rentals. For the most part. I've got a couple of Airbnbs, but they're more lifestyle properties than they are like true investments. But yeah, we're pretty much long-term rents. I am getting more and more interested in the pad split space. As a matter of fact, it's on our goal chart to buy a handful of those this year. I'm bullish on that strategy from a cash flow perspective. And the way that we do, I mean, the hard part is like in California, cash flow is really hard to come by. This admittedly, this deal is a bit of a unicorn, right? Like, it's not like every deal we do. The way I say it to my team is like, we don't build our business on home runs. This was a home run. We build our business on singles and doubles. And in California, singles and doubles we get good deals that produce enough cash flow to survive because we know they appreciate. But I'm looking at other strategies, other markets for cash flow. So that's why we bought 40 or 50 units up in Michigan. We just closed a portfolio, 12 single family homes in Ohio. And then, we're buying one-off sub twos. I feel like we close one or two a month. And we're just looking for, basically the markets that give us the best appreciation and the markets that give us the best cash flow, because I view cash flow as my defensive strategy and I view appreciation as my offensive strategy. So it's, survival and wealth. And that's kind of how we're building.
Great stuff. Now, are you guys writing the appreciation into your, like, the business plan as far as, like, or underwriting, or it's just the gravy on top, right?
We actually write it into the plan. Well, I mean, I guess it depends upon how you look at it. We write it into the plan in the sense of like, I'm fine to break even on a California property if I am in an area that I know has 6-7% average appreciation. So it's not that it's like built into like my P&L or like my pro forma, but like that's how I justify a poor cash on cash return in a area that I just know does really well appreciation wise. But I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't have deals back in Ohio that were giving me 25-30% cash on cash.
Yeah, for sure. All right. I love that. And it's a good way of putting it, because I was saying, like, to the audience out there are newbies, that I didn't want them getting tripped up on like, hey, oh, well, I'm going to buy this, it's going to be okay. Or guys, that's for a seasoned team, seasoned investor, a gentleman who has some banking background and that can understand the value and how to cash flow and how to not, or, there's other ways of leveraging a property for tax purposes and things like that. So everyone has their own strategies, but disclaimer, make sure you're going to be positive, cash flowing, and do safe deals,
Yeah. No, it's if you're getting started in the game, cash flow is the way you build. It is cash flow or assignments or flips or whatever. Like you gotta build your war chest before you can start deploying into longer term strategies, in my opinion. So I definitely would say, yeah, I do not advise anybody to get into a deal that doesn't have good cash flow. But as you build, there becomes some alternative strategies where that can start to make a little bit more sense.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I love that. And then there's areas you're like, I have to buy this. I just have to. We'll
Yeah,
make this.
I'm sitting in our lake house right now up in Washington State, and this was a bad investment by cash on cash standards. But I wrote off so much taxes, and it's waterfront property. Like I'm crushing equity. Like that's the like the next phase that this has afforded us to be able to build towards.
I love that, dude. And that, yeah, you bought like the lakes, oceans, camps, rivers, all that. Like, dude, those are the lifestyle, and those are the benefits of doing business and doing this business.
That's right.
Bro, you said it all. Holy mackerel, we went so quick. I felt like on this one. Michael, what are you looking for, and how do we get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. We have our own like little community. It's free. It's called Dead Presidents Club. So you can find us on Facebook. Just search Dead Presidents Club. We just like to help people learn how to do money different. And real estate is a big part of that story. So you can find us there. You can find me on Instagram. It's Miller Time ME. Miller Time ME on Instagram.
I love it. Miller Time ME at Miller Time ME, guys. No spaces, no dots, all together. Michael Miller, guys. What a powerful individual, and someone I think you guys should hit up and get around. Obviously, has done some deals and has some experience. But guys, thank you for listening to Get Creative Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Tumanowski. You can find me at realestatejustin.com.
Hell yeah.
So guys, that's the Get Creative Podcast. I'll see you on the next one.